Okay, yeah, this is the dumbest thing. I just wasn't hit. It didn't hit live. All right, we are good to go. Thank you for everyone who has come up here. We have a stellar roundup of SCP-5K people working on a fray. First, I'd like to introduce the lead concept artist and art director, Kyle Fitzpatrick.
Hey guys.
Next, I would also like to introduce two other concept artists, David and Lee.
Howdy.
Hello.
So SCP-5K is a really unique, distinctive art style. I guess I would love to hear like a roundtable discussion from all three of you. What are your sort of sources you drew for artistic inspiration, and what is the sort of guiding principles for designing the Affray's take on the 5K universe?
Sure. I might start off in that case. Key inspirations, of course, come from the wiki. We try to keep a lot of our visual designs very, very accurate to at least the written descriptions of things like the SCPs or the environments in which they're contained. When we approach the different environments, what we're trying to do is approach it from a bit of an interesting standpoint where we have the gameplay mechanics of the space in full mind for how we design how things are laid out. We're always trying to consider exactly what it is that the players are going to anticipate or what they might expect, and then working around that to create something that's not only visually interesting but also functionally appropriate for the space that it is that we're designing. And so the style itself, it's kind of like a semi-realistic, it's almost realistic but not quite there. But we have a very sort of grungy, dark visual style that runs through most of the pieces that we work on. And so, yeah, we try to bring that into every aspect to help drive the horror aesthetic and to kind of, I guess, add a sense of tension to every space. So even if you are in a potentially safe area, you still kind of feel on edge.
Yeah, for sure. Both Yi and I are both environment concept artists, and I would just build on what Kyle said and say, yeah, every area is kind of thought of in both SCPs, like what is going to be found here, but also the function of the people working in the areas. And for me, those are like the two key elements that make it unique compared to any other like horror or first-person shooter, for sure.
Yeah. Just to add a little bit on top of that, I think the unique thing about what we're working on is the vast amount of lore material in this universe that's already laid out for us. So it's a lot to draw from and it's a lot to get inspired from. And on top of that, we can always look for real world examples, real world materials to further bring the realism into our work.
In fact, that's a really good point that you're bringing up that aspect about looking at the real world. Because one thing that we do that is far different to any other sort of SCP projects that have been made to date is that we do try our utmost to make sure that everything inside of the environments and the spaces that the players will find themselves, it feels like it's a real space. It feels like people have lived there for periods of time, multiple periods of time, and that there are different activities happening in those spaces, and that drives a lot of our processes, right from the grander scale of the space all the way down to the smaller details, such as where dust is settling, where walkways are moving through different spaces, to labels and specific items or rubbish. Anything that you find within these spaces, we're trying our best to flesh out in a way that makes it feel like there's nothing out of place, so to speak. Like it's been completely, like this is just taken directly from a specific workplace, and now you're moving through that space and experiencing what it is that these people have sort of lived through before and after the events of the Omnicide taking place.
Yeah, I would say recently got on the project about 2 months ago or so, and one of the things that stood out to me a lot was that depth and basically literally everything we're drawing or painting or 3D modeling. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, I'd agree with that completely.
One thing I would love to see on your screen, Kyle, I don't know if you're preparing to do some sketching, but if you have any pieces of concept art, you can bring up, obviously nothing that you've been working on, but we'd love to see some of the older stuff to kind of explain what goes into it, because there's a lot of wonderful, really detailed artwork. I love looking at it in the developer Discord, and it would be great to showcase some of the stuff that maybe people have not necessarily seen, but that wouldn't be spoilery from like a previous update.
Yeah, for sure. So I do have a couple of pieces here that just so happen to be done by Yi and David. These detail spaces that we've wanted in the game, and they've been expected to be in the game for quite some time. We've not released these pieces quite yet, but I'm more than happy to show you guys what's going on in that space. So first and foremost, we'll start off with perhaps the reception. So this is a space that we sort of enter into that typically, like in a normal sense, like if Area 12 were running as a standard facility without the Omnicide happening, this is the front-facing section of the facility that officials would see, that people that are coming to inspect or perhaps visit this particular location. This is where they will be seeing, getting their sort of first impression, I guess. And so what's a sort of important aspect of this space is that this is where kind of the rose-tinted veil of Area 12 is presented, because of course, further on and deeper in the facility is where we have most of the experiments that are happening with the SCPs and with D-Class and such. And so, yeah, this is more or less a very literal front in both the metaphorical and physical sense. And yeah, so we had a couple of sketches done. This is Yi's work. So if you'd like to walk through, I guess, maybe a bit of your process for this, Yi, and we can, I guess, sort of dissect a little bit of your process through this.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess there's one thing I most enjoy about working on this particular environment is that it was given quite a bit of freedom to explore different possibilities to design this place. Like you said, it's the front of the Area 12 research facility, and it's supposed to be very corporate looking, very professional. This is the place that when guests come in, they see this place first, and then they were introduced into the further space beyond this. So this was supposed to be their first impression of Area 12. So we were looking at very corporate looking, professional, and a lot of big inspiration for Area 12 is also brutalism. So we took a lot of inspirations from real world brutalist architecture, interiors, and also considering some of the functions this place will serve in gameplay. And then I tried out a couple of sketches to explore how this space can be presented, what kind of stuff we can put in there, and yeah, just going pretty wild with it actually. Like you can see there are quite a few different layouts and different shapes I explored. Yeah, it's a lot of fun working on this one.
I think ultimately we landed on this particular piece, number 6. The scale of this one was a sort of a midway point between some of these smaller spaces and the much larger ones. The aesthetic, so like the style of the architecture itself, already fit really well with what we've currently got in the game. So that's something we also look at, is the modularity of the assets. Are we able to construct different spaces using what we already have to be able to save a lot of computational expense, I suppose, of having to load too many of the same, also too many of like different assets and things, and keeping that library sort of as concise as we possibly can. And so, yeah, we landed with this.
Yeah,
which
there's it's a further like detailed sketch of based on one of the thumbnails I did earlier, and yeah, just to explore the lighting situation of this space. And before we move on to a more polished piece, this is a step we usually take to make sure that we have everything we need, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's important to sort of cover these areas, this stage of the work, because like you say, the lighting, we have to nail that down. So the level designers know exactly how we intend for this space to appear, which areas are going to be spotlit, which areas are of higher interest, and which areas are more, just providing visual noise, or, is there something missing from the space? This is kind of the stage where we can really sort of nail that down. And then moving on from here, we end up with the full render.
Ooh.
So
I have one of our first questions. The Frightful Artist asks, what were the inspirations for the design of Area 12 and any recommendations for up-and-coming concept artists? Really enjoy the work going into the game. Hope to see more from y'all.
In terms of like the exact references for Area 12, we don't have like a solid specific source, but what we do look at is the various. There's two periods in particular. There's the brutalist period from the 1950s, and there's the brutalist period that resurged in the 1970s. So we look at both of these periods of time and the architecture that you can find in both of those, as a result of those architectural trends. The first, of course, was much more focused with form and sort of breaking, or rather introducing imposing forms within the environment to create a sense of power and gravitas. Whereas the brutalism from the 70s was sort of more functional, and it was more based around an appreciation of the materials themselves, and the incorporation of a lot of sort of bold and bright colors. So they started to deviate from purely looking at elements situated within an environment and how that could be integrated into different aspects of the space itself. And so we look at those elements from different buildings that exist around. So, for example, like the city that I live in, we have a lot of that architecture still present. Hasn't been ripped down. Still kind of very much apparent throughout a lot of the buildings. So I'll go around and take photos sometimes. Other places like Berlin have a really great plethora of inspirational buildings that we can really draw a lot of inspiration from. And essentially we're looking at that, and then we're also looking at spaces that we've got inside of the game and kind of cross-pollinating our inspiration from that space, from the spaces that exist, so that we keep things nice and consistent. That's at least in terms of the actual spaces themselves. That's where the majority of the inspiration sort of spawns from. Like you said, like with his sketching phase, we really sort of push those forms and explore a lot of different ideas to kind of just see what comes out of the rough, just to explore what could be and what can be, and then we sort of go from there and refine down and pick the best choices and explore from there. Of course, we'll get feedback and different opinions from the other leads as well, just to make sure that everything works on their end. Because, as like an example, if we had a space like this, but it had a giant mechanical door at the end, we would need to cross-reference that with the animators to make sure that that is a viable thing to do. If that's something that the 3D guys would be able to produce, a door of that size would be something quite involved in terms of the level of detail required, especially if you get to go right up to it. So making sure that we are having a good conversation with the 3D guys as well. And of course, talking with the writers to make sure everything's accurate, at least from their understanding or interpretations from the wiki. And yeah, that's pretty much what we look at.
So we have a question from Catherine W., who asks, will the stream talk about the artwork we've seen from SCPs like SCP-1262, SCP-3199, and SCP-940? I know this is kind of shifting away from the architecture to the kind of horror and monsters of the SCP. But we'd love, since you have such managed to create such wonderfully grotesque designs.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that. Just give me 1 second, I'll pull one up. I'll grab the 1262. I'll grab one of the spitters, actually. I think that was used in the thumbnail, so it's certainly appropriate to cover that. Where's he gone? There he is. Okay. Now I've lost it. There it is. Okay. So, for something like this, we go about a slightly different process. It's fairly similar to what we do with the architectural stuff, but a little bit different. So, for this particular guy, of course, we always start off with a brief that details exactly what this thing is, derived from the explanations, like the visual explanations on the wiki. What we then do is we go through and we produce a bunch of different sketches and things to kind of explore how this thing could manifest, how we could interpret that information from the wiki and see what kind of different forms or expressions can come from that. And then, of course, once we have something put together in-game, we'll then revisit that and make sure that that still works or has the most impact and kind of fits the environment in which it's placed. So this particular version, this was the second version of the what we call the spitters. So the spitters themselves are kind of an interesting creature, if you will. So they have several different elements to them, and these are different elements that were derived from other aspects of the SCP. So of course, once we had the original spitter put together, it was like a single vine. We had lots of decals and lots of models produced that had very much this kind of strangler fig aesthetic. And that was what was sort of coating the space. And so we decided, okay, cool. We might sort of play with that further and try and integrate that into these kind of creatures and see if we can blend that a little bit better. And so that's how we came to this particular aesthetic for the base of these guys. We added the spikes. That was from another concept artist. He produced a really interesting variant of this creature that had, the idea was that it would swing around and it would hit. It would actually be able to use its body to sort of whack the players themselves. And so that is a behavior that has since been sort of explored with that. And so we've updated the design to sort of match that animation. The various growths that you find around the facility too, they have this kind of like gold plating that sort of protects the internal organs that are within those pods. And so we added those here as well. And that was to tie in with, I believe it was the game director's previous artworks. He was exploring some different ideas of how we could have various organelles inside of this space that kind of contract and ooze out this kind of two-part serum that would produce the resin that then shoots out as the javelins out of these guys, making them a fairly formidable enemy. And then, of course, once we had that aesthetic, that functionality decided, we then sort of looked at, okay, well, we've got all these spikes coming down along this guy as well. How can we start to integrate, or rather transition, some of that aesthetic forwards to tie in the javelins? So we started exploring, okay, well, maybe these are actually formed from the resin themselves, and it's kind of like there's little holes that it then oozes out of and then produces these interesting spikes. Okay, well, if the pressure is greater here, perhaps the spikes then grow longer and longer and then create this really formidable sort of kind of like a morning star or like a mace, like sort of appendage at the end of each vine. And so, yeah, that's some of the process, I guess, of how we approach these guys. The only other thing that sort of updated when we did revisit this particular piece was we added this sort of crystalline structure inside of the base of these guys. And that is purely tying into one of the other SCPs that is planned for integration with this guy, which is SCP-621. And so that was to tie in with that aspect too. So there's a lot of different factors that influence the design of these things. And it's not always the first go that is sort of that we sort of land on. Oftentimes there's different aspects and different departmental influences that push designs into what they end up being in the final product.
Very interesting. So we had a question here. Oh, no. It was a really detailed and very thorough answer. So Goro Gregoro asks, do you work in 3D as well as 2D for this type of concept art sketching? So I would love to hear if it's just sort of 2D references, or do you use like 3D models from like Unity to kind of like get these buildings or creatures sculpted out when you're kind of doing the concept art?
So for creatures, no, it's generally 2D. The only time that we sort of delve into 3D with the creatures is if we have feedback to give for existing designs. So for example, like if we've say modeled this guy up and we've got him in game, if we decide, okay, no, this isn't quite working, we need to have sort of like, I don't know, like a banded pattern or, different weird appendages coming out of this guy, kind of make him centipede-like or something like that. We would then take a screenshot and we would overpaint and kind of push that to look like it's got these different elements that currently don't exist. But in the realm of the 3D stuff, for the environments, I'll let David and Yi speak to this, but their process definitely includes 3D elements.
I'll go first then. Yeah, absolutely. I would say that the discipline of concept art, making concept art, has developed for such a long time, and it also has to do with the development of 3D apps, 3D application programs, and how they're more available and more, I guess, user-friendly in a way. Now that people working in concept art have, especially environment, there's a majority of them use some form of 3D in their workflow, and it can be very like from the beginning of the workflow, or some people only do it at the end of it or at some certain part of it. But yeah, for me, I use 3D in various stages as I see necessary, because sometimes 2D is a lot faster and a lot more intuitive. You can just jot things down, making like ugly sketches if you have to, just to make yourself understand and get some ideas down. But sometimes when you want to make something pretty, 3D is so useful, and it's a lot faster to create something that has the effect that you want. So yeah, I would say 3D is pretty integrated into our workflow these days.
Yeah, for sure. I would say the thing 3D is really good at is getting things very refined and precise. Like there was a question in the chat from Blorkits of, since Photoshop does not have a built-in perspective tool, how do you tackle perspective? Do you import in a guide, or what do you do? It's really good to know the fundamentals, and knowing the fundamentals will make you better in 3D, but 3D definitely helps make things more precise when you're going for more of a realistic look in less amount of time. And then the second advantage to 3D in my mind is when you have to create an asset or a concept that you're going to look at from multiple angles. So like Yi's desk that was shown just a second ago is a good example of that, where we had that in the reception area as like the main lit and nicely shown, but we also have it here from like multiple angles. So 3D cuts down the time in being able to show it from so many different angles.
Definitely. And it's important to do that too in a lot of instances. So like, for example, this one, obviously we have that desk here. Front on, it's going to look quite different to how it appears from, at the top. However, we have these balconies in this space which allow us to, or allow the players to actually see this from the top. And so making sure that things are designed in a way that they can be viewed from multiple angles is really important. And of course, if this is blocked out, for example, in 3D, that could certainly be sent straight to the 3D artists for, as a base to then work from. To create a high poly and then further, refine that down to a detailed low poly. But then, of course, having these different orthographics in particular are extremely helpful too if we don't have a 3D model to work from, because that actually provides an insanely accurate sense of perspective for the guys that are working. Because if they, operate using an orthographic view, they can get things pretty accurate to how they're first conceptualized. Yeah. Something else I might point out too is that with every area, a lot of thought goes into what each section is for. There's never really anything that's designed that doesn't serve a purpose or doesn't have an exact function, whether that be something lore-wise, whether that be something visually interesting for the player that's necessary for changing the mood of the space, or whether it be something that's interactable or something that helps identify, like wayfinding or whereabouts a player is in a space, or even just landmarks. Sometimes things just serve a simple thing such as orientation. And we put a lot of thought into making sure that all of that works.
Well, we have an interesting question from Record Breaker, who asks a little bit about gameplay and art. Will we see a balance between the art of the game and the gameplay it presents? My problem is that the rooms are too large, coupled with the slow speed of a tactical shooter, making exploring not so fun. Interesting question, although I think that there is a run feature in the game, so you can kind of like move fast if you need to. But it does, I think, present an interesting question between the balances of creating art spaces, but also things that serve as practical gameplay. What do you think the balance for that is?
Yeah. So one thing I will make mention is that the current pacing in the game is not 100% what we intend. And we also don't have a lot of the instances, like the SCP instances, implemented in every space that we want them to be implemented in. So a lot of the spaces do feel fairly bland or empty at the moment, and that's purely because they haven't been fleshed out with the exact functionality, and that's just part and parcel of the process. There's like animations that we wait on, or perhaps that we don't have programming set up in particular for particular SCPs. And so we can't have those implemented just at this stage, at least publicly. So, we do have some spaces, of course, that do feel a little unpolished, but that's just, unfortunately, the nature of working on a project in an iterative manner, such as we are.
Well, here's a really great question from Lear. Do you prefer doing environment art or entity art, singular enemies, props, weapons, that sort of thing?
That depends. It honestly depends on the artist themselves. I know David and Yi, they both prefer environments and props and things like that. Myself, I prefer creatures. Creatures and characters are a lot of fun for myself, but I also enjoy doing environments and props as well. We've got we've got an artist who purely works on characters. And we have had other artists in the past who have only specialized in creatures or only specialized in props. And so, yeah, it just honestly depends on the artist themselves and what they find most interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I would add on that in a lot of the environments we're doing now, like with 1262. A lot of them are integrated into the environment itself. So it's like you get a double bang for your buck in the sense of including the creatures at the same time you're thinking about the environments. And one of the things I like as well that I get to do a little bit is like consider key moments and like revealing of new areas or revealing of this new thing in the game that I enjoy a lot, where we take into the factor of like, oh, what's the player's point of view and how can we light this in a special way to make this moment in particular special. I like that kind of stuff as well. So like a little bit story related.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I would say that when it comes as much as preferences, it's oftentimes it's what the game requires of you. Like I myself probably enjoys art surface a little more, like environment props, but I cannot deny the appeal that sometimes it's very interesting to think about like soft surface characters and how those like things like planned on our SCPs, what they said integrates into the environment, how they would grow and how they would like find themselves in that environment. It's very interesting to think about. So as it's more like, I guess it's more interesting that way to be able to work on an environment that has all these elements in it.
Yeah, very interconnected for sure.
Yeah, especially when we get like for example, like David's work here for the processing labs, which for those of you that don't know, these are the first labs that you would see when you enter the game. These are the ones that set the baseline standard for what a lab kind of looks like, at least in a normal sense, before, of course, we enter more perverse labs that are geared towards the modification of SCPs and the research of such. So spaces like this in particular, they sort of have kind of elements of everything. You know, they have creatures, they potentially have characters, they potentially have soft body stuff or organic surfaces, lots of hard surface elements, and many different materials as well. So the way in which they must be rendered or approached is going to be quite different depending on the particular spaces that it's put inside. And further to David's comment about the lighting, these spaces are really important because there's so much going on. There's so many different aspects to them. How we light them and how we force a player, or rather guide a player through those spaces, is really important, and it changes the experience quite dramatically as they sort of approach different aspects of it. So, for an example, if we consider this particular space, it's been split into different areas for different sections, like different taxonomies of creatures. And so if we guide the player through more harmless specimens first, so things like plants, bacterial samples, different soils or things like that, and then we slowly and gradually move them through to different insects, and then furthermore to different actual like mammals or reptiles, and then potentially 2, small-scale SCPs, you can create a gradual experience, which is quite significantly different if you were to go, say, the opposite direction, and it becomes more of an anticlimactic thing, or perhaps it builds towards the next experience being anchored towards whatever the last or more recent creatures that you're encountering are.
So that brings up a really interesting question. Chuck is curious to know, how is a unified style kept between all the artists with a team of this size? Since obviously you all have different backgrounds, different art styles. How do you manage to keep a cohesive art style while working with so many different parties?
I would
That's a
say
really good one, actually.
really quick one. I would say the art director definitely helps a lot in that. So take it away, Kyle.
No, sweet. So first and foremost, the artists that we have on the team, we sort of, during the hiring process, we certainly make sure that everyone has a similar kind of workflow, and also just a similar visual style. That helps a lot in having to, because like it's difficult if you have a different style and you need to learn to adapt it or learn to adopt a different style. So if you can find artists, I was very lucky to come across David and Yi. They both have extremely similar styles to what we have in game, and it just marries really, really beautifully there. But that being said, they both do still have different styles to each other, and to myself as well, and to the other artists on the team. So what we do is we go through lots of periods of feedback. We refine things, we adjust, and then of course everything that we produce is then interpreted by the 3D artists. So then when I help to influence or sort of manage how things are looking from that side of things with the 3D lead, we're making sure that, of course, okay, is the quality standard the same? Are we using similar textile densities? Are the forms repeated throughout different things? So like, for example, if we have one creature that has skin that's visible, do we have folds and flaps, and does the texturing and even just the way that it sits match how skin is sitting on other creatures in the game? Or does the fabric on this particular character match the particular kinds of fabric on these characters? And do we have similar folds and contours within those shapes? And so that's a lot of the process of directing that, is making sure that there's a consistency between those elements and that nothing sort of feels out of place. Because once something does feel out of place, then of course we have to revisit that and go, okay, how do we approach bringing that back in and reining it in to feel like it's meant to be there?
Yeah, I would mirror that, especially on the environment side. The main things I'm looking for are like for area 12, the first level, it's like, are we keeping the same similar forms in the reception? How can we bring the same colors to other areas of the same level, and the same materials? Those first off are like the 3 primary things I love to do.
Yeah, I would like to add that very much like David said, like art direction is important when it comes to retaining a cohesive art style. Sometimes it's not even the style, it's just the design language, what kind of things you put in there, what kind of things you don't, to make this feels like a cohesive environment. When you go from point A to point B, you don't feel like you're in an entirely different place. You're still in the same place, but in a slightly different area in the same place. So I will say that, like, for example, Kyle and other leads on this project have done intensive work to make sure that we have guidelines to many things, what kind of things we can do and what kind of things to avoid. So that really helps us when we design things to make it very easy for us to make decisions in a way.
Yeah, we definitely do have a lot of documentation. especially we have like for environment stuff, in particular, we have branding guides that I put together a good while back to illustrate how each section should appear relative to what time period it's from, and what exact design elements need to be considered or need to be present. So there's always like I guess kind of a checklist of, okay, what needs to be in this space. This space is a modern area. It's been recently refurbished, so there's not going to be a lot of grime. There's not going to be a lot of damage or like grunge and dirt. Whereas if it's an older section, yeah, it's going to need those elements, and it's going to need a muted, sort of more earthy palette. It's going to need more vintage assets and different elements like that.
So we've got a little bit of a two-pronged question from two users that I think kind of dovetail into each other. So Losing Sanity asks, how do you create all the textures in-house? Will the other SCP-173 models be used, or will B be the only clone? And then Chuck asks, similar to this, when a new creature is concepted with multiple design, what goes into picking the right design for the game? How do you land on it when you have like kind of multiple versions? When do you know something feels right when you're kind of adding your own spin to a classic SCP entity that's going into the game?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yes, we create most of the textures that we use. Some assets, of course, we do upscale and well, not upscale. Sorry, it's more. It's kind of like redoing it, I suppose. We do take some assets, and rather than building them straight from scratch, we do adjust them so that we have a consistent quality, but can cut down on some time, because then we can free up more time for the 3D guys to work on more like hero stuff, more bespoke stuff for the game. So we do use most of the textures we make ourselves, but some stuff we do have to cut a couple of corners with. But yeah, the goal is to hopefully have everything that we have in game stuff that we've made 100%. That being, of course, textures and of course models and everything like that. But just in the nature of getting the game done, we do have to use some other assets from other places. Another thing that we do also sometimes do is outsource some things. So things like vehicles, where we can outsource stuff like that and then process it once we get it back. And that way we can cut down some of that time. But yeah, essentially, if we have like multiple different designs for a creature, what we end up doing is we look at, okay, well, we've got all of these creatures for the game. Does this appear too similar to one of these other ones? Do the physical attributes of this creature lend themselves to a similar animation to these other creatures? And if so, can we break away from that a bit more so that it feels more unique? We look at so visual similarities, movement similarities. We look at thematic differences. So if a creature is used within a particular area, does it match? Does it feel out of place? Does it have an ability to interact with the environment or potentially other SCPs, so that we can justify an interesting interaction within that space? And so yeah, there's a couple of things that we look at. But generally, we look at, okay, the sort of one of the key things we look at there is, okay, does this thing does it tick all of the boxes from the visual description in the wiki? And does it take a unique approach that we haven't seen before depicted for this particular SCP? And as long as it's ticking all of those boxes and that it's different enough from everything else we have in the game, and it feels like it's going to be a unique enemy that is paced differently to how other enemies are paced, then yeah, that's usually how we pick those particular designs. And also further to that, the 173 models, We are still looking to see where exactly we can fit the different instances, because of course they all have a very similar, if not the same, behavior. Making sure that we are not just sort of running from one creature to the next creature to the next, and it's just it becomes too repetitive. It's one thing that we really look at is for the grander scheme of things, and it's more so in the game director's realm, looking at, okay, does this pace well? Does this actually fit and make the experience interesting, or does it sort of take the edge off of that? And so that's how we sort of approach that, and it determines whether we do have those multiple versions or not.
Well said. So there was one person who asked this previously. I forget their name, but there was a question about will there potentially be an art book featuring all of this concept art? And nerd / King of Horror 22 asks, is there going to be any more artwork planned for the outside levels, like the Outpost Axiom level? I don't know how much you could say without spoiling things, but if there is some artwork, I know that there's some Outpost Axiom artwork I posted on Instagram. I don't know if you have that accessible, but yeah, people want to know about the outdoor areas. So say what you can say.
Yeah. Yes to both. We do have an art book planned, and we do have more art planned for the outdoor areas. Axiom, I do not have anything to show at this point, but there definitely will be more artwork for that area, and potentially other areas too.
Now, this is a little bit of this may not be your area of expertise, but I'm going to throw it out anywhere, since maybe you can give a art director's interpretation of it. Palm3, hard to read his username. Why do you choose to use fire as a way to block off areas that are unfinished or simply going to be a part of the game or placeholder? I'm talking about chapter 1. I'm not talking about chapter 1. I'm talking about chapter 2. So my guess is that fire is like a very convenient thing to show off places in disrepair or chaos. But maybe there's a more informed answer from 3 artists in terms of why is fire used as a sort of way to direct players.
Yeah. Fire is certainly an easy blockage, and it's been used quite heavily, particularly in the first sublevel. That was because we had the sprinkler system set up, and we were testing and playing around with how we can approach setting that up and funneling players to where we need them to go. There are some sections, of course, that you just simply can't access, and we do that a little bit for more storytelling purposes. I will admit most of the fire placed is done so by the level designers, and it's more so about how they influence the gameplay loop, where they want players to go and how they intend for them to move through the space. The actual placement of the fires themselves is not necessarily the only, like fire's not necessarily the only thing we can use, but it has been something we have used quite extensively for that purpose. We're just waiting essentially, because you can use other things. You can use, we do have other things like the containment breach shutters, which are intended to be dropped down, of course, with the containment breach that's currently happening from 1262. We have some elements that we can use to block things off, but we do have to be mindful, because for example, if we block something off with a bunch of crates or a shipping container or any other elements that can block that section, we do run into this problem of, well, why is it blocked and how did it get blocked and why is it blocked with these particular items now? Does it make sense for a facility that's currently trying to, get prepped for a global omnicide to have blocked off most of the exits or entrances to the areas in which they would be transporting things or stuff like that? So it is a little bit of a double-edged sword as to what things we can use to block sections off. But yeah, it's just it's a work in progress, of course, and definitely not necessarily the final iteration.
Perfectly diplomatic. So while the fire captain asks, will we see any designs for containment cells in the future? And if so, are they going to be unique or containment breach style? So I guess people want to know, are we seeing these SCP containment cells? Are we seeing cabin in the woods style cells? What kind of containment are going to be holding these monstrosities? What kind of Jurassic Park design are we seeing?
Yeah. We certainly will have a bit of a mix of both. Some SCPs we just simply won't have the ability to showcase in their full sort of glory. So we will have some standardized containment cells, containment doors, containment windows, and such. But other SCPs that are more pertinent to the story, pertinent to your experience as the player, will certainly have more customized, unique, and bespoke sections to be able to hold them.
Very good. So, with the latest piece of artwork teasing the much anticipated 014 update, I think people are looking forward to seeing the Chicken Man 3199.
Oh, yes.
What can you show us of the Chicken Man or tell us about the process of designing everyone's favorite Chicken Man?
Sure. So I don't actually have a lot of the artwork available for that. We're going to release a lot of that when we release that particular anomaly. But I can say that he will have quite an interesting behavior setup. It's going to be something that has not been done in this game before, and I think it will be a lot of fun. But yeah, the design process for creating it, perhaps because this was created by Trey Bishop, the key sort of thing to keep in mind, the key thing that he kept in mind when he was working on that was to design this thing as if it's in pain. There is nothing about it that is comfortable, that is that is natural. Like everything about it just feels wrong, and so every aspect of it, like the proportions, the way that the skin is mottled and the way it folds and stretches taut, the lumps, the way that its teeth kind of grow out mangled from its face. Everything about this creature is designed for it to look uncanny and sickly, which I believe the modeler that actually worked on this one, which was Sterling, I believe he's in the call today, did an absolutely fantastic job on it. And yeah, it's a very interesting SCP. I think you guys are going to really, really enjoy it.
So one thing I'm kind of curious to ask, is there any kind of, Westside Story, Jets versus Sharks rivalry between the 3D and 2D artists? Do you ever get into dance battles with snapping on the street?
No, I don't think
That's
so.
pretty funny. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
No, we work really well together. It's a really nice, cohesive team. And yeah, I think there's a really actually quite profound, deep level of respect for each other's craft. We absolutely love what the 3D guys put together, and yeah, likewise, I don't want to speak on behalf of them, but I hope that they like what we put together. I certainly get that impression. It's awesome working with them, and I've certainly seen, like, on both sides, people working on the 2D concepts, getting really excited about the concept itself, and being really proud of what they're producing, and then again, the 3D artists getting really excited about working on it and really pushing forwards and enjoying the process of putting it together and bringing it to life. So yeah, it's more of a wholesome situation, less so than a battle, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. I would add, at least for the environment concept artist, we use 3D all the time. You know, it might be a little scuffed 3D that's never going to make it in the engine, but, you know, we don't hate on 3D whatsoever. So, yeah.
So Chuck
Yeah,
asks,
being
sorry, finish your thought.
sorry. Okay, I'll be real quick. I mean, being kind of new to the project, I feel that just much like Kyle said, it's a very harmonious situation between the 2D and 3Ds. They've been very supportive of what we do, and they do seem excited to work on what we come up with, even though sometimes we do worry about, have I created something that's very difficult to do, or it's too much, like it costs too much engine power, that kind of thing. But so far, it's a very good relationship between the 2D and the 3Ds. Yeah, back to you.
So Chuck asks, is concept art for rooms kept with level designers in mind? The current room on screen is the specific points for doors and furniture. Is gameplay a thought while the art is being created, or is the concept more important part of this process when you're kind of iterating? Very interesting question.
It's a good one, actually. Really good one. We have a sort of we have two kind of pipelines that we sort of work with. The first is when we receive a blockout from the level designers. Ideally, this blockout is something that has been tested to make sure that the gameplay for that area works. So the blockouts themselves are usually very bare bones. It's a couple of gray squares with whatever assets are on hand just thrown in to give a general impression of what the shape of the space is like. And then we get to go sort of crazy with it and go, okay, so this is what the player is doing in this space. This is how they're moving through it. What can we do to address how much attention they should be paying? Do we need to have something that's really kind of shocking that's going to capture their attention? Or do we need to have this designed in a more generic sense so that they can just sort of pass through? And so that's the first one, is that we have the area already tested, and so we already know what the behavior is going to be like. Or alternatively, if we are working on something ahead of time, so for example, if we are working for a part of sublevel 2 or something from sublevel 3, we could start to anticipate what the player may need to do in that section, but more so artworks that we make for those particular sections are like ahead of the level designers. It's more so like a mood piece. It's just to nail down the style, the feeling of the space, what it's going to be like, what visuals might be there or should be considered to be there. And then the level designers can then use that as a jumping off point for then building their block out. And then we revisit that space afterwards. So yeah, those are the two ways that we approach that. Yeah.
To work off what Kyle just said, for this area in particular, it was the first method of, we have it in game already. I'm like looking at the size and shape of the room. This one has a very particular shape that I thought was cool, but making sure like we have a clear like pathway to walk around. But besides that, placing things how it makes sense, like scientifically, utilitarian wise. And showing off, in the key areas, splitting up the space story-wise or set dressing-wise. But yeah, definitely a first one where we have the level already done, bare bones block out to start.
Yeah. Whereas actually, if I jump back to the reception, so the reception section, you guys probably know it as currently as the room with the dance party. There's currently, it's like just after the parking garage. That space it is blocked out. However, we have taken a much sort of grander approach to how we want to envisage that particular space. And so something like this is more so like the mood piece. but it's also something that the level designers can take as literally as they choose. Because of course, depending on the flow of that whole section and all of the key events that happen, so sort of like the beat map, I suppose, if you will, how that works out for the player and what that does to the player's experience. If it works to have a space as large as this, then fantastic, we go ahead with that. If it needs to be cut down a slight bit, we revisit it. But that's just the nature of working on some things ahead of time and approaching things in a way that we think can help to really solidify or improve the experience.
Fantastic insight. So one thing I was kind of curious is, do all three of you have like an artistic background in gaming, or what would be say was the beginning of your art careers that kind of led you to Affray, or did you come from like more of a film background?
I guess I'll start off. Growing up, played a lot of video games. Classic Nintendo stuff, and always wanted to be an artist of some sort, and so ultimately figured out combining the two made me fulfilled, and that's how I'm here. So combining the two passions into one.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, you go first.
No, you go. It's all good.
Okay. All right. I mean, yeah, kind of similar, I guess. For people who get into the game industry, they usually have a pretty intense passion for games. I grew up playing games, and I always liked drawing. Well, actually, I wasn't a art major when I was in school, at least not in college. But it was after I did a few jobs, and then I realized, okay, if I'm going to do something for the rest of my life, I want to do something I'm interested in. I like drawing, I like games. What are those two combined? And then I realized, okay, maybe I should give this a try, and I try to study it and then break myself into this business. So I feel like it's a common story for people. Not everyone know that they want to be a concept artist since they were kids, but some people just stumble upon it. A lot of people just stumble upon it, actually.
Yeah.
That's just myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I was originally into more illustration, marketing illustration kind of stuff first, but concept art fulfilled the role of kind of like new, exciting things always coming your way instead of trying to work on things that have already been like figured out, basically. So it scratches that itch of new, innovative, trying to make something creative every single time.
Yeah. For myself, I was classically trained as a graphic designer, and I worked as a freelance concept artist for a number of years before working in the mobile game space. And after that, I moved over to Affray full time, which is I'd done like freelance work for them before. But yeah, basically onboarded as a creature and character artist, and yeah, basically went from there. The kind of a similar story, I guess. I always wanted to be an artist. Always wanted to do that. I think it was like maybe when I was 2, I think I decided I wanted to be an artist, and so I never really strayed from that, which is a bit unconventional. Many people do just sort of find their passion much later in life. But yeah, I've been working with the team for quite a number of years now, and yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Always been a fan of like games and films, of course. More so older stuff. Like used to have a Sega, and I'd play an obscene number of games on that, and then moved on to the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and then yeah, just built up from there. Got into VR, and yeah. found my way into PC games after that. So yeah, kind of an interesting parallel to David and Yi, and pretty similar, I guess, to some of the other artists that we've got on the team as well.
Very nice. So Chuck asks, on the topic of the wiki, when bespoke SCPs like 7528 are being created, is the design a collaboration between the writers and the art team, or is it more art is created after the story is written?
7528, that one's the screen anomaly, I believe. So it's kind of like a it kind of depends, I guess, because like the screen anomaly, for example, like the first thing that came with that one was the functionality of it, and then the writing came after that, and then the visuals came after that again, and then the visuals kind of influenced the writing after that as well. So it was sort of a rounded thing, sort of came full circle. But other creatures, like I won't name them, but there's some other creatures that were based purely on the art, and it's just when someone has an idea and they sketch something out, they think this might be cool, and then we approach that and go, oh yeah, no, that could work, and then we test it, and then we decide, okay, yeah, this works for this area, we're going to include this in the game.
Very nice to hear about that collaboration. So Nerd King Horror 22 asks, will we be seeing any artwork for SCPs mentioned in the attributions page, and will SCP-940 have multiple instances like SCP-173? This is a question I posted before, blah, blah, blah. Just making sure that I got through it. So I finally got that question out here. So can't wait to hear your answer.
The attributions page, I believe we will have anything that's used that requires attribution will of course be added. I'm not sure when the last time it was updated was, but that will certainly be done. The 940, yes, we will of course have some variations of that one. That's going to be something that we are all very much looking forward to. But I won't show any of the artwork for it yet, or the process, because it is still a little bit under wraps.
Well, also along those lines, Nerd King Horror 22 asks, will we be seeing artwork for the Door Squids in this stream? I love the Door Squid, such an original SCP. My guess is probably not, since I think they want to keep that one fresh. But I guess what wonderful teasers could you give for the, since, we've kind of hinted at the Door Squids in that teaser towards the end of last year.
Gotcha. I can't share anything about it, actually. I really want to, because it's so cool. It's actually turning out really, really well. We have done quite a lot of work in the programming and animation side. I think, I don't think I could share anything about it yet, but I would definitely like to.
And Losing Sanity asks, how do you plan to add cosmetics and implement them into the game? Is it just changing outfits, Fortnite, no detail customization, or deeper extra detail, ready or not, mags, vests, holsters, t-shirts, the whole shebang? And I guess, what is the art process for adding cosmetics or coming up with variations on the sort of typical character model?
So we are planning customizations. How that is going to manifest is still in discussion. There's a few different ideas that we're sort of playing with, but yeah, it's just going to honestly depend on how complex the system's going to end up. Because we do have like some skins, for example, we plan for that to be like an achievement thing that you can sort of unlock. However, how we can sort of set that up in a way that doesn't break the experience. Because of course, if you're still playing like the main campaign, we don't want your gear or your outfit to deviate from what would appropriately exist during that particular part of the story. So yeah, we're just trying to work out a balance at the moment as to what exactly it is that we can change, and to what extent.
Well said. So losing sanity not losing sanity. Lefkes asks, this is probably a good question for all of you. What is your goal for the future? How long did it take you to get in this position? What were the struggles? So how did you get the positions you hold now in a fray? Was it just getting good enough to be noticed? Was it building up a good enough portfolio? How did you become the men you are now?
I would say, how long did it take me? Well, I'm 27, so probably 27 years to get this position. But besides that, yeah, I've been working in the industry, professionally for about 5-6 years now. And the main things that probably got me this position were, like Kyle said previously, like my work matched what he wanted to see basically on this project. So making sure, every day improving your work, thinking critically about what you're doing, how it could be better. Let's see, how long did it take to get this position? What were the struggles? I would say definitely it's hard to be honest with yourself. Like, you want to be good at doing your job, doing your work, having a good portfolio. And sometimes, like, it's very mentally taxing to be like, well, I'm not very good at this aspect. I need to improve that. I need to reach out for feedback. I have to contact these people to get like a good outside perspective. And so, art directors are great for that when you're in the industry, but when you're outside of it, you have to really go out of your way to receive honest feedback. So that was definitely a struggle, getting up to this position for sure.
Yeah, similar for me, I would say. I've been working as concept artist for probably 7-8 years as well. I got into the industry a lot later, so I'm not as young as David. I guess I'm experienced in other fields. But yeah, I would say that getting into at the beginning is probably the hardest because you don't have any experience, you don't have any credit on your resume. And then it was a lot of times it's purely luck, or sometimes the connection is very important too. What kind of people you know that maybe they can introduce you. So a lot of that works on that. So I am not a very social person, but I would recommend anyone who wants to get into an industry, get into a business to go out there and meet people. Yeah, that's definitely helpful. Yeah. And the struggle, I would say, it depends on different people, but the struggle is pretty much daily because you want to create something new, but you want people to understand it, especially for concept artists for video games, that we want things that are understandable, grounded, but that's never been seen before. It's a catch-22 situation we face day to day. So yeah, that's a struggle, but that's also the rewarding part when you actually come up with something that, oh, this is pretty cool. I did that. So you're happy with what you did.
Yeah.
So that reward is at the end of the day that's what keeps it going. At least that's what keeps me going. And yeah, basically it's what people say, there's no magic juice, there's no thing you can drink and become a good artist. You just have to be honest with yourself, see, okay, am I doing good enough, or what am I lacking, and try to improve upon that.
Well, thank you for
Yeah,
that,
Um,
insight. Oh, sorry. Continue.
for myself, like I said before, I was freelancing for Afray at the beginning. So that was like 2017, 2018. I was working on things like it was mainly stuff for the Kickstarter campaign, like the Size E creatures. And after a while of yeah, yeah, I worked a couple of other jobs and eventually landed a position as just a standard concept artist, again working on creatures and characters. Uh, because I had a background in graphic design, I was able to muck around with a lot of different decals and signage and things like that. And that sort of broadened my scope of what I could do at the company. So I started doing a lot of sort of additional tasks and things that were the things like the branding guides and stuff like that, which that actually helped me to land a position as deputy art director, which I held for about 6 months. That was back when Trey was the art director. And then after that point, Trey, he became the game director, and then I stepped up to art director for that. So we're doing that for just over a year now. And yeah, so yeah, it just honestly depends on what kind of stuff you are sort of more willing to learn and what kind of stuff you want to be able to do. It's a tricky industry. It's a very tricky industry to get into. But once you're in, you're pretty much in. Like I think the worst struggle I had was when I finished university. When I started freelancing, I wasn't able to land like a solid job in the industry for about a year and a half.
Yeah, similar.
And it's yeah, like it's really discouraging, especially when you've put in so much, like so many years of effort to get to the point where you can start applying, building up like a portfolio. But that said, if you stick at it, you do eventually make it. It's more of a test of metal, I suppose.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
But yeah, as long as you have the passion and you have the drive to learn and to improve, you'll always make it. Like you'll always get there. It just takes time.
Great encouraging words. I don't know if you have it on hand, but by any chance, do you have the style guide for the retro Area 12? Because I remember that was shown a little bit in the one of the dev logs, but I don't think anyone ever got to see it like up close. I've seen it. I think it's really
Yeah.
cool. It'd be cool to like, yeah, oh, look at this bad boy.
There we go. Get it zoomed in a bit more. No, too much. Okay. Yeah, this one. So, yeah, this was one of the things that I worked on a while back. It's gone through a couple of iterations. Yeah, it's kind of cool. The purpose of this, it's pretty much like it's set. I've constructed it as if it's from the actual, like it's what they actually use to build Area 12, which is kind of helpful because we can use these documents and things like in game. But yeah, essentially these things are used fairly regularly to make sure that we're sticking, close enough to how the style and stuff needs to be inside of Area 12, and that the documentation, wall signage, stuff like that, is all nice and consistent. But yeah, the process of making something like this is a little bit lengthy, takes a bit of time, especially with so many different things to sort of put together. But by the end of it, it's pretty nice to have something like this, especially that you can sort of go back to. How would I describe it? I guess if we need like elements to fill out a particular space that we don't necessarily have something that we can use on hand, we can jump to something like this and sort of just rip pages out and go, okay, we'll just scrunch these up, apply them to these paper meshes, and then all of a sudden we've got a bunch of different things that we can post around that work really well. And we could also, dive straight into the source documentation as well. So, like the actual source files. So all of this stuff, although it's all textured, it is all vectored. So all of this stuff we have access to, and can scale it forever, and make sure that we can, apply that to whatever we, sort of need.
Yeah, this one's going on a billboard, in a year to advertise.
Yeah, it's like a good example of that actually with like stationery, things like that. Like all of this stuff, it's all like vectored, so we can jump in, we can scale it up and apply it immediately to the actual models that the guys are working on, and then we have that stuff just straight up. So it saves a lot of time and a lot of effort, which is sweet.
I think Cave Johnson very much approves of this. It's worth the lemonades. Like, get me all the lemonades, as he would say.
Yeah. But yeah, we do have some things. I think this particular document, we will try to make this available as well as the modern version as well. This is not fully up to date. It does need a couple of small edits and things. Just to match up with what we've currently been doing in game, but it is fairly close. A pretty good, it's fairly indicative of, I guess, what the document may look like in the end. But yeah.
Interestingly, if you scroll back up a little bit towards the mock-up orthographic, yeah. There was a question in chat, I forget the specific wording, but it was about like how do we guide the player in a space to go where we want him to go? And one of the answers, obviously, if we look at this, is like the lining on the wall with the arrow. A lot of times we use lighting, just like the level design itself will help guide us towards where we need to go. But if you have any more additional things besides that, Kyle, or you, go ahead.
No, it's absolutely right. Things like this, like the super graphics, we have planned. We've not got them set up yet because it is a pain, to say the least, to get something like this working. Especially when it, like, each curve is influenced by not only objects in the scene, but also by other lines and stuff as well. So it's a bit of a complex system to set up, and it's a bit of a more lengthier one. But once it is set up, we will have obviously these ones, like the curved ones for the retro stuff, and the more crisp and clean angled ones for the modern stuff. So yeah, it's going to be fairly interesting, I think, once we get it all put together. But this is one interesting way as well that we intend to color the environments, because obviously, like, Area 12 is pretty much built from cement. And the way that we're going to break that up is by coloring the different environments with these different colorations. And so that's how we'll have the sort of really bold, industrial colored aesthetic that we often see in modern industrial plants for the modern sections. And then, of course, all of these muted earthy tones for the retro stuff.
Here's a question that Chuck's been waiting for a while. A question for Kyle. How has the pipeline of art changed at Affray as the team has gotten larger?
It has changed a lot. Originally, the way that we sort of worked was it was kind of like an open forum. We just had like a discussion of, okay, we need this, we need that, we need this done relatively soon, so this guy can work on this, or this person can go do that, or she can do this. And we would just basically work with a fairly nebulous structure to how we did things. But that has since changed quite dramatically. So now we have a very structured routine for how we approach different things. So, like, for example, with the art process, we would have a game design brief written up for a particular thing. Let's say 3199. We would have a brief written up for that, saying exactly what it is, what it should look like, or roughly how it should function, what its purpose is gameplay wise, and what the whole point of having it in the game is in the first place. and then that would be sent to myself, and then I would come up with a creative brief for the artists. The artists would then, I'd walk through that brief with the artists, make sure they've got everything that they need to be able to produce a design for that thing. We then move forward with designing that thing. That could entail a couple of sketches, silhouettes. It could entail black and white value drawings. It could be the thing in context in an environment, or potentially just a render, or better yet, a contextual that shows perhaps it from different angles, or detailing what materials and things are associated with that particular thing. And then once that is done, we then move forward to producing. We get like feedback, and we talk with the other leads and make sure that everything's cohesive and is going to work. We then have that piece fully rendered, if it needs to be, and again, another feedback round to make sure that, okay, is the lighting correct? Is that going to work? Are there any things that we missed? Are there any particular aspects that don't potentially line up with Trey's vision for the game? And then, of course, we address those things, and then once it's all done, we upload it across all of our various platforms, like internally, to make sure that everyone on the team has access to that. So the 3D guys know what they're doing, the animators know what's coming, and the programmers know what's going to be next on their task list. And then we sort of go from there. And of course, those pipelines differ depending on the department. So for like the 3D department, that's a whole other ball game as well. And animation, of course, has their own. Every department has strict pipelines depending on what it is that they're working on.
It was a very good overview of how the process has changed. Evolution is always fantastic. It's how you stay alive. So Bush's Baked Baby asks a very contentious question. Have AI art generators been used for inspiration or ideas? What do professional artists like y'all think of AI art? Ooh, the cursed AI art. I'm sure we'll get some very interesting discussions, although I'm sure, have any of you guys heard about the Willy Wonka event in Glasgow, Scotland?
That was hilarious. Yes,
Oh, yeah.
I have.
I think we all saw how well AI art worked for that, but sorry, go on with your answers.
No, we have not used any AI for this project, and we certainly have no intentions to. I personally really dislike AI art, like AI generated imagery, just because, like, I don't necessarily hate the tech, but I hate how it's being used, and I strongly stand against the theft of art without any permission even sought or attempted to be sought. And so, there's not. I certainly wouldn't allow that from any of my artists, and certainly not from myself, to be included in this project.
I would say, as an artist, I would probably advocate for my fellow artists getting the compensation that they're due if their art is being used to generate images, and being able to opt in or out of the data sets, basically. As for the art itself, I've seen inspirational AI art. I've seen AI art that is, I don't know if I can curse, but crap, basically, or just repeating the same thing literally over and over and over with slight changes. It all looks pretty similar once you get each AI artist, if you want to call them that. I think artists, like, whatever you label this person, like whatever they want to call themselves, that's cool. But each one has their own style, but their styles aren't that much different than each other, especially when the subjects intersect. While artists, traditional artists, you could say, on their other hand, usually take a wide variety of looks at, like, a human woman, which is like the most common AI art thing ever, right? And so ultimately, not using any AI art on the project, and hopefully, better representation in the future for using AI arts, if it is used at all.
Yeah, I will add that as much as AI came out, it exploded into this phenomenon that people are saying all these artist jobs, artists are getting replaced, that kind of thing. But at least so far, the thing that we see, at least I see, coming from AI is just very generic and regurgitated stuff, because that's the definition of it. It uses existing data to try to emulate it, to learn. I guess in a way you can call it learn, but it's not exactly the learning that humans do. But they learn that and try to mash things together and make it into a thing that's similar to art. But I've tried it myself, but it's not useful at all because it doesn't create anything original. And yeah, it's maybe that will change in the future. You never know. But also there's the ethical question that Kyle and David brought up, is that has to be resolved first for anything to be practical or to be used ethically, at the very least.
Chuck says, "Drats, I was planning to start a rival studio based exclusively on backrooms content. I would have gotten away with it too, wasn't for you artists."
Yeah, I swear this guy Chuck has some knowledge that other people don't have. I don't know why he's asking all these good questions, you know?
Well, Chuck does have another question. What different processes are used for the wide variety of 2D art in this game, and how do you choose to approach a specific task? I see some completely different styles, from the Area 12 blueprints to creature designs with a focus on anatomy, especially with this style guide.
So what we usually do, right, is we go, okay, what is the actual intent of this document? Is this a document that is intended for the 3D artists that are making the game, or is this a document that's set like inside of the world, aimed at architects that would be building these spaces? So like when we do our research for how these spaces should look, or what these pieces should look like, that's what we're kind of addressing. So for example, like this style guide, one of the main inspirations I took for this one was actually the branding guide from the 70s for NASA, that was made publicly available a couple of years back. So a lot of the ways in which they approached presenting the information was like they would have documents and they would set those up and go, okay, this is what this particular kind of document would look like, and this is what this one should look like, and this is how you use the logo. And then they would do like orthographics for buildings and things. I chose to take a slightly different approach. I did these are all isometric. So this is just purely to go, okay, this is how these arrows and things wrap around these buildings. And I chose that purely because it fits, it's clear, it's concise, it makes more sense. And you know, it's easily understandable from a quick glance at how this particular element is being used. Whereas like with this kind of stuff, this is more, you know, aimed, of course, at the level designers and the 3D guys. So you're going, okay, this is really cool. This will make more sense for, you know, for setting the mood for this space, for working out what kind of particles or lighting or elements and things. It just honestly depends on the purpose of the piece itself. Same thing can be said for like signage. Like we're designing the signage for SCP Foundation employees that would normally be working in this space on a regular basis. So how we approach that versus how we approach what a creature is going to look like are completely different processes. So yeah, it just depends on the intent of the piece or the audience, so to speak.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to put it very, very succinctly, it's definitely the audience. Is it the 3D artist I'm sending this to? Is it the level designer? Is this just to get Kyle's feedback? Whatever it is.
So we are coming on to an hour and a half. I know some of you guys have to get back to your work day. Would you like to keep this going for another 20 minutes? People are definitely enjoying the casual thing, but I don't want to use up too much time.
I didn't realize it was that long. I'm happy to go for a bit longer if you guys are.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Works for me.
If you guys are cool, then I always like to be considered of the talent. So just out of curiosity, I've been getting this question a lot. What is your personal favorite SCP? And if you could pick any SCP to add to the game, this doesn't mean it's coming into the game. What would you add?
To give a short answer, I've been working on something I can't speak about in the game that's grown on me, but that one's pretty cool and looking forward to when it's out. But yeah.
I'm not sure. Like my favorite SCP, it always used to be the mannequin, but I don't know. When you do same sort of deal with David, like the longer you work on various SCPs, like the more attached you sort of grow to them. So I think mine has shifted somewhat. But yeah, I think I don't know. I guess perhaps the of like the ones that we haven't worked on, I guess 9 through 9 will always hold a special place. I think there's some cool stuff that we could do with that one. But yeah.
I also don't have a good answer for that. But it has nothing to do with anything, but didn't we solve SCP that's basically a hamburger that creates French fries and speaks German the other day? That's a pretty interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the boss of the next level. Watch out, guys.
Yeah. Just absolutely blasts you with like 50 tons of chips.
So Record Breaker asks, what Easter eggs would be implemented in the full release of SCP-5K? And I guess to add to that, do you ever try and include any Easter eggs in your artwork? Like, oh my God, I love John Carpenter's The Thing. I'm going to include a reference to McCready, or I'm going to, do you ever try and include Easter eggs into your artwork?
I think I'm going to try and do it, but not tell anybody and hope they just pick it up, the 3D artists and level designers, and hope, for the best it gets in somehow, but nobody knows.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some already. In the first area of the game, there's like a small setup that's like a throwback to Five Nights at Freddy's. It's just a simple computer desk setup with a bunch of monitors, some items just lying about, and I think the phone rings as you walk past it. But we've got a couple of different references, and we want to have like lots of classical ones sort of thrown in there, but tastefully done. Like it can't be way too obvious. It needs to be integrated in a way that still fits. As long as it's subtle, it's all good. But yeah, we certainly do have them and intend to add more.
So you're telling me my Terminator poster, on the front desk is not going to make
it? Maybe. I'm sure there's robots that we could pull from. Make a SCP version.
Yeah.
Apparently that Easter egg was very effective. Cal and stuff said that effing phone scared me so much.
Yeah. Perhaps the best jump scare that we've got so far.
So Left Kiz asks, how hard was it to create the gun system and how long? I know this may not be your area of expertise, but I guess it is kind of an interesting question. Like, what kind of work goes into designing the guns? Do you just like take what's in real life, or do you take any liberties in designing the weapons, or is that more of the 3D modeling department?
So this is definitely one for the 3D modeling department, and particularly for the gun system. That's more of like a question for Albie, and the programmers. But the gun system is definitely something that's always being tweaked. It's always getting something done to it to make it a little bit more accurate, a little bit easier, a little bit more fluid. And the guns themselves, to my knowledge, they're all accurate, at least as much as is possible within copyright restraints. I think we have some partnerships with various organizations to allow us to have some of the guns that we have in game. But yeah, essentially, we don't have anything at this point that is like a deviation from what currently exists, but that is possibly going to change in future. It just depends purely on what kind of functionality would be different, and if it's really worth the effort of going through an entire, modeling phase and animation phase to get a firearm in the game that has as something set up. Because like, if we make something that has too much power, like it's just too OP, it just becomes a cheese, and you can't really, it's going to ruin the experience. Whereas if we have something that's unique, but it's just too lackluster, no one's going to use it, no one's going to want it. So it's a fine balance, I guess, to try and set it up. But yeah, I believe we do have like mocap animations as well, that we have sort of started using and relying on for a lot of the gun animations, at least for third person. First person stuff, I think, is always done from scratch. And that's, if you want to learn more about that, that's definitely in Anders' realm. So, yeah.
Nerd King Horror 22 asks, will there be boss enemies in the game? This is an interesting question, because I know that there's like one design creator that I don't know if it serves as like a traditional video game boss, but it is kind of like from a gameplay, something a little bit different than your standard enemy.
Yes, we do have boss type enemies. How many of them is still up for discussion, but yeah, we do plan to have that to coincide with the beat map.
So when you're creating pieces, what is your like go-to guide references? Do you sit back, watch some anime, watch some Western cartoons, or just look at, go to Pinterest and reference real world stuff? Where do you draw creative inspiration when the well runs dry?
A lot of times it is real life reference that's just like tweaked and emphasized a little bit, but sometimes movies are good for specific settings or specific light, specific mood as well.
Yeah, I'll say inspiration-wise, a lot of things work. Like, we've all been influenced by various video games and movies, like horror movies, horror games. Like, for example, working on the SCP 5K, I'm reminded of things like Half-Life, Resident Evil, all those classic titles. But for design itself, we I myself at least try to stay away from actually looking at creative work by someone else when I'm doing design. I try to go to the source. Sometimes you can guess what kind of things people looked at when they create their own designs, and you can go to the source for reference there. So that will usually allow you to create something that's more original.
Yo.
I look at a whole plethora of stuff. Sometimes I do jump on Pinterest if there's absolutely no ideas flowing at all. Usually, though, I tend to look at nature. So much like you just look directly at the source and kind of extrapolate from there. I also love, of course, films, games. It's great to sort of jump back and see what other people have done, not necessarily to derive like much inspiration, but more so to make sure that you're not duplicating something or redesigning something that's already been done, because that's always something that's at least floats around in my mind is, making sure that, well, I hope I haven't, unintentionally come up with something that already exists. So it's always good to cross-reference and check and just make sure that what you're working on does fit that sort of criteria for being something original. But yeah, it's inspiration can really come from anywhere. Even just sitting here, like I'm looking out the window and I've got these blinds and all these. It's sort of like a grill, I suppose. The sort of setup. It's like a decorative one. I could take inspiration from that for some sort of section inside of the game that could easily kind of work as an interesting either decorative element or perhaps even an entire environment itself. Because like playing with scale really helps. Looking at like microorganisms can really help with getting like odd but organic forms for things that would otherwise be larger. But yeah, you basically just want to make sure that you've got a unique silhouette to whatever it is that you're making.
Well said. So Chuck asks, are there any specific pieces you'd be interested in showing? Nothing that will spoil the game, of course. So I guess, are there any pieces that you can't show now that you're especially proud of that you could maybe hint at that maybe you'll get to reveal once an update is out? Or things that you're particularly proud of that, like, if you could show it off, you'd be like, yeah, this is going in the portfolio. This is going on the refrigerator. This is going to make mom and dad proud.
Yeah,
it's a tricky one.
I can't show, but there's definitely, a string of pieces that's definitely really cool. Right up my alley, artistically, and I think they mesh well with one another, but yeah, can't show that, so.
There's a lot. There's actually so much. Actually, there's so many pieces that I'd like to show. But yeah, I think, maybe it's best to hold off on it.
Funnily, I'd like to show some of Yee's pieces for Yee, but can't do that either. So.
Unfortunately, like almost all of the work that David and Yee have been working on is aimed for this update, or the update that's following it. And most of the work that I've been working on too is for that update and for beyond, which is unfortunate because some of the stuff that's for beyond is some really, really cool stuff that would be very nice to show off. But yeah, it'll be too spoilery, I think.
Yeah, gotta wait for the game to see what we've been working on.
Yeah.
Been working on some pretty cool environments that it's not even that I myself is, let's say, proud of what I've created, but it's just that I can't wait for it to be in the game to see how it comes out and to be in that environment. It's not always about the art piece I create, it's about the product. like the game. That gets me excited.
Yeah, I think it's awesome when you see everything come together. Like, I don't know, it's just it's different. There's a different feeling to it, like seeing, or rather being immersed in the thing that you've created. It's there's a strange quality to it, but it's cool. It's good to see.
Yep.
So we have an interesting question that has come up in the YouTube live stream, where people are kind of curious about like futuristic stuff. I'd imagine the Foundation would have some pretty high tech weapons. Yeah, I was wondering about the slight sci-fi stuff like caseless ammo, G11, or a railgun. So what are the ethos towards of how futuristic you can take things? Given the fact that, like, you know, the player is kind of like a ground level, you know, tactical Rainbow Six guy. Like, how far can you push the sci-fi design aesthetic without breaking the sort of realism of SCP? Because SCP isn't Halo. You know, you're not getting a plasma gun.
Yeah, it's a tricky. Admittedly, it is a really hard balance to sort of sit within. The game takes place in 2020, so we can't have anything that's like, and especially as the players, like you're just standard FBI operatives. Like you don't really have any future tech that's not sort of already readily available. So of the tech that the Foundation uses, a lot of that stuff is not necessarily something that we really play with too much, and that's simply because Area 12 is it's a mountainside facility. It's not exactly the biggest facility. It's not exactly the most important, but it is. I guess also, like, within like the story campaign, it's not like you really sort of face off against the Foundation in the sense that they're prepared super well for you. Like, it's not like they were anticipating your arrival and got set up with a bunch of they're like most high tech weapons or set up a bunch of traps and things. It's less so about that and more so about I guess it's more so like trying to keep it grounded within the story as well as the time period itself. But that said, like, it depends because obviously, like, the game doesn't just take place in Area 12. We have intermissions and DLCs and stuff like that, and places that are outside of Area 12 too. So there are other contexts in which we could certainly look at it. But at least for the moment, for Area 12, we won't be pushing things too sci-fi. We want it to feel grounded or at least grounded enough that things that are kind of sci-fi still feel like they exist. Perhaps the closest sci-fi stuff we'll see is within like the big labs. But yeah, we'll get to that when we get to it.
Well, good to hear that is the sort of distinction and line in the sand you have to not push it too far. So, you're not wielding plasma swords. Nerd/King of Horror 22 asks, are multiple campaigns planned? This may be a bit of a spoiler, though, but I feel like SCP-5K will go beyond Area 12. Ooh. Interesting question.
Ooh, stealth mechanics. That's a good question. Ooh. I'm unsure about stealth mechanics. That is one that's... I'm not 100% sure about that one.
Oh, I guess I stop me if you already heard this one, but are multiple campaigns planned? This may be a bit of a spoiler question, though, but I feel like SCP will go beyond Area 12. I don't think I hit my talk to press button hard enough. But if I did, let me know if I repeated myself.
That's so good. Actually, I think I might have inadvertently answered that just before. The main campaign is the main campaign. That does spread across the intermissions, despite them being in different environments. So yes, we do have other environments other than Area 12. Of course, we've got like Axiom and others, but yeah, it's not just Area 12 itself, but Area 12 is the main epicenter for what's happening, at least in our game.
And well, this is another thing. Oh God, this also drives me insane because do you have any main villains planned for the game, like character villains? I believe there are, and there's like a lot of really effing cool character designs that I'm like looking at it, and oh my God, these characters look so cool. I want to show them. But I haven't been given the green light. But there's some amazing character artwork.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we do. We have characters planned. And yeah, villains, of course, are definitely part of that. Yeah.
I guess for the character designs, what style goes into them? I mean, I'll try and be vague, but the villain looks very stylish. There's this one character who looks really, really cool. Like not a design I was expecting. Mr. I'm trying to be vague as possible.
Yeah, I guess we try our best to make sure that the character designs are grounded and more than anything else suit the descriptions of the characters themselves. So, who they are, why they're there, how they're there, how long they've been there, what they're doing, why they're doing it. These sort of questions we ask ourselves as we design. So, would it make sense, necessarily for someone to, be wearing particular items of clothing when they're situated inside of, various, let's say like a lab versus an area that's under construction or more organic environment. Like it just honestly depends on A, does it make sense for who they are, and B, does it make sense for where we're going to see them as the player.
And another question I got from a little while back. Are there any video games you guys have been playing recently? What have you been enjoying out there in the video game world when you are not constructing the dark madness of the SCP universe?
Recently been playing Helldivers 2. Shooting bugs, shooting robots, having fun with friends. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
This would be random, but sorry.
No, you go. You're good.
It's pretty random, but I've been playing Crash Bandicoot. It's very different, but it's sometimes you need to wind off, just focus on jumping and spinning, crashing.
That's
with
how I live my
barrels,
life.
with crates. Yeah, I mean,
Focus on jumping and spinning every day.
Not everyone. Yeah.
That's awesome. I've been playing Death Stranding, and I just replayed Scorn pretty recently too. Yeah.
Focus on walking.
Yeah.
One thing I could
Been
say,
sinking way too many hours.
Scorn's got some great art design. I'm sure that would make a fantastic art book. I know that like the art direction in Scorn is fantastic, but then again, I love anything that reminds me of H.R. Giger.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I think it's what they did with the style and everything, like the mechanics, everything is integrated to work with the with these, just with the stylization. And it's clever too. Like I really liked how they approached each different environment. Like they actually took the aesthetic and pushed it towards various sort of sub aesthetics within the broader style. So yeah, I don't know. It's just very clever the way that they approached it. Yeah, it was cool. I love it.
Just a Crusader guy asks, the real question is, do you guys actually like the game? Ooh, we got a badass over here.
Wow.
What am I supposed to say? I hate it? Like what?
I think he wants to know if you're a poser.
I do like it. I personally like it. It's definitely not. It's like in its current state, it's nowhere near finished product that we've planned. So it does not ring true for what we're aiming for yet. The way I sort of think of it is like what we've currently got there. It's kind of like a sandbox. It's where we've tested everything that we're trying to explore. But the actual narrative, like the whole storyline and the sequence, once that's in place, and all of the mechanics and things that you've played with and seen and the experiences that are currently there are properly integrated, it's gonna be pretty sick. I think it's gonna work much. The final product's gonna be way cooler.
Yeah, I was gonna say very similar thing where knowing what's behind the veil right now, it's this is gonna be crazy. It's gonna be the encounter is gonna be funner. The areas are gonna be deeper in lore and consideration of guiding the players or being just plain cool. So it's gonna be awesome. So looking forward to that for sure.
So Rose Flood asks, being a game, there are limits on where you can play and can go, what they can do. How do you enforce these restrictions without sacrificing realism?
So there's a couple of different ways. Obviously, we can block off areas and stop people from getting to them using, of course, fire. We can use other obstacles too. Other things that we can do as well is we can actually flood, other areas with various enemies so that we can actually funnel the player in a particular direction. Other things that we can do is we can just simply simplify spaces so that we force the player into exploring sections that we want them to explore, as opposed to moving through a larger space that doesn't quite live up to what we want. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I guess there's a few different techniques we can use. Lighting is one. Color coding is another. We can use various environmental elements to guide the player. So let's say, for example, we've got a corridor filled with doors, and we don't want the player to explore any of the doors or try any of the doors except for the one at the so let's say the second last one. And we'll say there's 50 doors in this corridor. What we would do is we would probably use maybe 1262, and we could actually string that across most of the doors, except for the one that we want them to explore. It's a really basic example. We could do something like that to stop the player from going where we don't want them to, but still funnel them towards where they need to go.
Good design philosophy. So Nerd King of Horror 22 asks, will there be any drivable vehicles like during the long tunnel sections in Area 12, like how the Battlefield games allowed sometimes drivable vehicles for small sections of the game? I don't think there are plans, but I could be wrong. And I'll add an addendum in case there is no plans for drivable vehicle sections. What is your favorite video game vehicle?
I don't think there are plans for it at the moment either. I think it's quite a complex system to set up. And and not something that we really have the resources to explore at the moment. That could change in future, of course, but at least for the moment, I don't think there's any plans for it. In terms of favorite vehicles, if you've played Final Fantasy 15, my favorite vehicle is the Regalia.
I don't know if I have a favorite vehicle. Trying to think.
No affection for the Warthog, Scorpion tank.
I remember playing like Star Fox. I forget the name of the spaceships they have in those, but those were the bomb back in the day.
R-Wings, is that what you mean?
Yeah, sleek, fast, hell yeah. Do a barrel roll, all that stuff.
You never not do a barrel roll. If it's Gun Nerd asks, if it's all right, I do have a question. I notice you guys have a lot of AK variants. Do you plan on adding any M16/M4 variants?
At the moment, I don't think. I think there's one gun that hasn't been released yet. I'm not certain if there's any more planned, at least for this update. I would have to go double check the spreadsheet for the weapons. But yeah, essentially, I'm not sure about that one.
Dang, Gun Nerd is disappointed.
I think there is one gun. There's like a Magnum possibly coming in the update. I think that was talked about before. So there, maybe not an AR, but there is like some weapon for you gun nuts out there. But there's already a lot of guns. You're spoiled for guns. There's so many guns, you don't have enough things to shoot them with.
Yeah. Actually, I tend to wonder how many variations we've got, like with all the attachments and everything. We would have quite an insane amount now, I reckon.
Oh, it's insane. Like, I've gone to that workbench. It's like, oh, do you want a laser sight? Do you want a grip? Do you want to put a silencer? There is a ridiculous amount of customization. Like, it almost makes me wonder if there's a way to, like, how do you transform 5K into its own little version of Counter-Strike, considering how many customizable options there are?
True.
So, I guess... are there any movies you've gone specifically for reference? Because obviously you can see a lot of aperture science in 5K. Are there any special movie references, do you think, that have been like the biggest influence on the artwork you've produced for 5K?
One movie, I can't say the movie and I can't say the environment, but... it's unfortunate I cannot say, but it's pretty classic. So looking forward to when that comes out.
Yeah. In terms of like a specific film, I'm not sure, but at least in like in terms of like sound wise, like it's a bit of an odd way to think of it, I suppose, but at least like if I'm designing any environmental assets or things like that, like brutalist elements or things like that, I'll certainly have like the, if you've seen the Maze Runner, just the grinding and the sound of all of the heavy concrete and all the hidden gears and things moving. I have that sort of just playing in my head because it just helps a little bit with the aesthetic. At least the kind of feeling that you want to kind of convey with some of that stuff. But yeah, I guess it depends on the on the creature, the environment, or whatever it is that we're looking at for inspiration.
Speaking of inspiration, Chuck asks, what is the most important piece of art in your life? Movie, film, game, or is it just traditional art? What has influenced you the most as artists?
Oh boy.
Good question. It's a very deep question, but let me think.
The list seems to go on.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
Yeah. And it updates every once in a while for me.
Yeah.
Yes, that something that immediately comes to mind is when I was studying design, studying like entertainment design. I was really into the art of Frank Mullins. He's he's the guy who used mouse to draw paint in Photoshop. He's like a really like a master kind of figure for concept artists or digital illustrators, and he has this all of his work. He has this traditional feel to it, and he has this impeccable grasp of light and color. That's just that even I don't know, even after 10 years, 20 years, I'll be able to create something, to make something like he does. So that's like create something for me is that I want to be like that one day when I grow up. But yeah, this is something to go towards. And I would say that's pretty influential. Not a particular piece, but his stuff.
Yeah. I think perhaps for myself, okay, so the question is for your life, so not necessarily work stuff. So I would say perhaps the work of oh, actually no, maybe I guess in terms of like in terms of like a film, it would probably be like The Dark Crystal or The Labyrinth by Jim Henson. Um, I don't know. There's something really unique about those particular pieces of media. Um, the artwork that went into the making of them, by Brian Froud. Like it was just, I was enthralled by that when I was younger, and I guess that sort of spurned a lot of my earlier work, and influenced a lot of the ways in which I approach creature design. So I think that's probably it for me. But yeah, there's so many references now and so many things that have influenced how I produce my work, and it of course changes like like month to month and even daily. Just depends entirely. But yeah.
This isn't like one piece in particular, but I remember when I was like 10, 11-ish, just being on the internet and seeing like awesome artists just randomly posting like their awesome digital arts, and me being like, out of anything else in the world, like sculpture or oil painting, traditional art, um, I saw like digital art as like being like the peak of what was possible for me to potentially do in the future. And so that like click made me get a digital tablet, and that really steered my career towards what I'm doing now. So that digital art culture back then really drove me.
Heath Spittler asks, have you ever designed something awesome but it was left out due to being impractical or something? Is there like a really exceptional art piece or exceptional idea that you designed that wasn't able to make it into a 5K due to being impractical or not able to translate into 3D?
Yep. Yep, that has certainly happened a couple of times. But that's just the nature of it. It's all part of it. The caveat of concept art is that you are purely coming up with concepts. It's not a guarantee that what you've made is going to end up in the game. It's not a guarantee that it's going to be used or even ever be seen. You're just purely there to help guide the visual ideation phase of what something could potentially look like. But yeah, I'm not sure if it's happened quite yet for David or you, but at least for myself, there was a couple of pieces that I was really proud of that just didn't work. That they were awesome, but just not quite the right designs. But the beautiful thing about it is that as time goes on, sometimes you do find instances where those pieces can be reapplied or recontextualized in a different way and can still kind of make it in some form, although it being different to what it originally was, which has happened for, I think, one of the pieces that I did previously and a couple of pieces that others have done as well.
On this project, I don't know if anything has been left out yet, but on previous stuff, yeah, there's been some moments where I think I create some cool, but it doesn't match up stylistically or what the director envisioned, and I think it's super cool, but it's just like, well, it's kind of useless for the project now, so it's a little sad, but, you know, that's what you gotta do.
Yeah, same. Not on this project yet, but it's just, it happens a lot for concept artists, I believe, is that when we come up with 10 ideas, 9 of them will be rejected because only one gets picked. So your job is to get rejected and enjoy it.
True.
Yeah.
Anybody else relating here to rejection?
It's cool. It's good. It's I think there is a certain satisfaction, I think, in when you do have a particular piece that sort of stands above the rest. And it's interesting, like, which pieces do it, because sometimes it's the first one that you come up with, and sometimes it's the last, or sometimes it's something in the middle. It's always interesting to see, and especially when you get feedback from others too. Like, there's ideas and things and different ways that people interpret what's been done that can really sort of help to influence it, which is really cool. And it sort of adds, I don't know, like a different aspect, a different quality to the work. And you sort of see it with fresh eyes, and it takes on a whole sort of new life of its own in a way.
Chuck says the game needs more microtransactions. I think $50 for a skin would be a great addition. Gunerd says 75. Chuck says loot boxes. The great minds of EA have this figured out.
Yeah. That's
$1 per 1% of skin.
It's 5K is not monetized enough. So, all right. So hypothetically, let's say I'm an evil corporate overlord, and I'm like, you got to design 5. Like, how many skins do you think you could each design in a week if you had to? If we were under microtransaction fascism.
Good question. My idea is, you know, with this new revamp of the game, what we do instead is you have to individually purchase the SCPs, so you don't get them in the game until you pay like $5 for them. And so it's like empty, you just walk through unless you buy it. I would like that.
That is devious. That is.
It takes a lot of effort to make those, you know? You gotta pay up.
That's truly innovative. Yeah.
It almost reminds me of what was that game Evolve, where you could play as a monster, but you had to buy the monster.
Yeah.
Nerd King of Horror 22 asks, will there be more friendly SCPs like Dave in 5K, like SCP-6044 or SCP-5595?
Good question. I'm not entirely sure. I've not seen any documentation for other friendly SCPs yet, but that is certainly something that could crop up.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool.
So look for the the SCP friendly SCPs possibly, although none are quite planned right now. Although who knows? Maybe they'll be like, you know, the infamous Diablo cow level. Maybe they'll be the infinite IKEA level. But don't quote me on that.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a lawsuit and a half.
Speaking of Diablo, we should have mounts in the game, or it's like a friendly SCP you take on. You know, it's cosmetics for it. We get more money. It'll, pay for itself.
It's curious. I'm not sure exactly what other friendly SCPs are that we might interact with.
I know there's a box who looks like an Amazon cartridge, and he's got a little smile. I think his name's Dave.
Yeah, that's Dave. Yeah.
I don't know how you'd model gameplay from him for him, but benevolent SCPs would be add an interesting function. Although I think considering how much time and effort it takes to program the monsters, it may not happen so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think every SCP that is in the game will have its own unique behavior and function and ability. Like the way you have to approach each SCP will be different. And so that's going to really help to sort of promote the more tactical gameplay. Like you're going to have to be really strategic about how you approach each instance. But yeah, it's a curious one.
Parox34 asks, do you think NPC interaction will come in the future, like Survivor or Team Outside? Good question. Especially with all those characters that they're designing that haven't been shown out. Ooh.
Yeah, I'll leave that one up for a. I won't spoil that one.
Answer redacted. Oh my God, people are asking. They're just begging. Battle Pass when? When do I put in the credit card for bullets? SCP 5K reloaded. Who knew that there was like such a strong desire for financial domination?
Awesome.
I do have a question for the devs. Could you add a drivable forklift? I'm a forklift certified, and it adds to immersion. So, what would you do to design a forklift and add, go about, like, I guess this might be a good thing, before we wrap up. I don't know if you want to pull up your drawing screen and give us like a mock-up of if you were to add a forklift into the game, what would be like a 5-minute version of your creative process. There are no forklifts being added into the game. This is just a hypothetical for the man who asked about forklifts.
That's interesting. I'm not sure if we will have a drivable one. I think we do have animations planned for them, so they won't be like drivable, but you will be able to potentially use them to unblock passages and things. Wow. But I suppose,
yeah, halfway there already.
But yeah, I guess if we were to design a forklift like from scratch, first and foremost, of course, we'd build like a bunch of references and things and just have like all of those set up in like a mural board so that we can see exactly what we're looking for. And we'd use those references to start designing up like, okay, how could this start to appear? Perhaps it's got like, I don't know, sort of hefty like engine parts visible. Do we go with something that's more standard in design, or do we go with something that's less conventional? Do we have something that's got, how large is it? What spaces is it being used in? Do we do something that's set up in a pretty basic environment that this thing needs to be able to move through fairly, simply? Or do we need to have something that sets this up for a, I don't know, like what kind of functionality does it serve? Is it something that you just purely drive around? Can you lift this up and down? Do you have to fuel it? Is there some sort of like battery or generator attached to this thing? You know, do we have to be mindful of like the, you know, it's a good point in there by Gun there, you know, like product placement, like do we go with a particular design, or do we have to be conscious that we're not, you know, ripping off a design? Do we have to make sure that there's like, you know, basic controls, or is it really complex? Is this an anomalous one? Does this have like some sort of, I don't know, alternative thing? So like, does it have these forks? But like, if you look at the top view, does this thing also have some sort of additional fork-like elements that come from the side? Like, is this thing lifting up crates that are, you know, standard sized, but also, you know, huge things as well? Does it have like, you know, heavy duty pistons or some sort of grapple thing that locks into the ground? And then, you know, we think further from there, do we have these like, you know, bolt holes that these things would hook into to ground it as it's lifting up huge loads? Or, you know, I don't know. It just depends entirely on what the parameters of the task would be. And then of course, once we've got like a solid sketch, we go, okay, cool. For the 3D guys, we'd sort of work out, okay, what would be most useful? For the 3D guys, of course, orthographics are always going to be more useful than anything else. A 3/4 is really difficult because you're only seeing sort of one side and the front or the back of an object. That can be a little bit tricky because, like, if you send that off, they then have to compensate for the perspective. But if we design this like orthographic, like side view like that, top view, back view, whatever, then they'd be able to model that with much more clarity as to what's actually being designed there. So yeah, it's yeah, I guess that's what we would probably do. And then to finish, we'd go like, okay, well, once we've got the design sort of worked out, does this thing have like some sort of tint? Does it have like radio stuff? You know, are there like logos and things that need to be placed on the surface? Is this something that the foundation has custom built? And if so, is that, you know, branded as such? Manufacturing labels, PIN numbers, what do those correspond to? You know, if you've got like a 12-digit number, does that code for something? Is that like a secret? Can we take that and then use that somewhere else in the game, or perhaps on like a, you know, like on the website or something like that? You know, there's a lot of different things to sort of consider, especially with like a vehicle. We would also have to consider like what it looks like inside. Like, you know, you have like your steering wheel of some sort. You'd have like your control panel for turning it on, setting different settings, controlling the this. I need to do research to actually know what it looks like inside, but you know, you'd set up some sort of design to see, okay, well, this is what it looks like from inside. Do we have different panels? You know, where are your blind spots at? If you're inside this vehicle and you're driving around, can you actually see what you need to, you know, you're interacting with? Can you see like the forks? What angle are you sort of looking down from? All of these kind of things need to sort of be considerate of. And if that is the case, then we have to talk to the, you know, like the animators and go, okay, so now we need a bunch of animations for turning this wheel, for pressing these buttons, for interacting. And we need all of that to coincide with the animations of the actual forklift from both the first person and the third person view as well. Because that would be, because of course, you know, with different clients, we'd have to make sure that there's a syzygy between what you're seeing from a third person point of view versus the first person. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what we would do. We'd go through that process. Once we land on something cool, we then color it up and yeah, start rendering, work out what materials are what. Perhaps this thing has a, like if this is used for transporting SCPs, maybe they have considerations for if the SCPs escape or breach whatever you're transporting them through. So maybe it's like bulletproof glass. Maybe there's like, heavy duty bolts. Like everything's just like really heavy duty. Like it's designed so that no SCP could really pierce through it. Different things like that to consider. And then also, is this just an industrial vehicle and we go with all of these like really hard standard angles, or are we going to sort of soften it? Do we curve it off, or I don't know, do we add like extra elements to allow this to extend way higher than it should? Is this then going to become a mechanic that you can stand on and lift up your mates or stuff like that? So there's lots of things to consider, especially with something like that. But yeah, that's essentially the kind of process that we'd go through. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
That was an exhaustive look at the creative process at Forklifts, and I think that was a wonderful design. People seem to love it. There was a lot of, I did not expect to see so much forklift love. The Omnicide couldn't happen because the Foundation didn't renew its OSHA permits. So most forklifts have a steering wheel like a 3 levers or sometimes 4. It would be an OSHA violation. Has to be the most realistic OSHA audits. Get the writing team on its staff. Who knew there was such passion for forklift lore and forklift art? But
maybe every time you look back, there's more. There's just more and more of these levers. So perhaps you have to, turn your head side to side, and each time you look back, there's just more controls to be mindful of. I don't know. Do some funny stuff.
Who would have thought that the best SCP would be, a world where Maximum Overdrive, Stephen King's old movie where the trucks come alive and start running people over, would become a vision for what this game could become.
That's the future.
Ezek asks, when Devastator?
Not yet. But maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly when the time frame for that is. We have put a lot of work into it, but it is still not quite ready.
As the young kids say, the Zoomers or the Gen Alpha or whatever the hell they call the young kids, let them cook. Let them cook. The Devastator must be cooked in the kitchen of art and animation and design.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. I think because we have the arts done for it. I believe it's been, I believe the final pass on its model was recently done. So now we're just waiting for animations and stuff. So fear not, it is in the works.
See, there you go. The Devastator has not been forgotten. It is still cooking in that kitchen. It is still coming out. I hope that the process of the illustration of this forklift design just goes to show how much care and attention and detail goes to things that exist in our world. So when it comes to things that don't exist, then you just got to take the extra step and take that extra time till you get it right.
Cool beans.
Ezek also asks, also, when's the Agitator coming out? I've seen the 3D model of it like a year ago. Is the Agitator something you can talk about, or is that still is that in the cooking? Is that in the kitchen cooking it?
Oh, the Agitator. So we're currently looking at it because the way that things have been paced, we're just trying to work out 100% where it's going to fit the best. So yeah, and we did have a discussion about that quite recently, and I think we've come up with a pretty good solution. So yeah.
Agitator's cooking. It has not been forgotten. It is progressing. So there you go. That is good. We also have a request. Where can I find your portfolios? I would highly recommend linking your portfolios in the chat if you're able to, and then I can also link them in the YouTube chat because people would love to see your collective works.
Yeah,
Sure.
for sure. I will apologize in advance. Mine, at least, is quite outdated.
How could you?
Yeah, I know. Absolutely horrendous. Oh wow, it's very outdated. Oof. There we go.
So there you have. I've also
Yes.
posted it in the YouTube chat. So you can check out all of their art portfolios, even if they aren't the most up to date. You can see all of the various stuff that Kyle, David, and Yi have made, all of their wonderful artwork. So definitely check them out and let them know your thoughts. Tell them your appreciation. That is what they live for.
Cool. And I think there's a question there. Have you guys heard of Insurgency Sandstorm? If you have, do you think their armor system would work in game? So yes, 100% have. We've actually got several members from the development team that worked on Insurgency Sandstorm working for us. So yes, we are very familiar with that. The armor system, I am unsure. That is an extra functionality that would affect your ability to fight against a lot of the SCPs. So that is something that would need to be heavily balanced. But yeah, it could be something that we explore perhaps later down the track. Yeah, SCP-008's the infectors. They will still be in the game, but not in the capacity that they are at the moment. And they may also have a different appearance.
So, just out of curiosity, let's say you could design any kind of dream monster. You got the writing team, some of the most well-respected people in the SCP community. They're going to build an article around your monster. It's going to be put in the game. What kind of monster would you make for all three of you? You have carte blanche to design whatever monster, and James Cameron has come here with $100 million to give to Frey to make it happen. What are you making?
To be honest, we all look at art every day, and so many cool creature designs pop up. My philosophy might be it'd be cool to do a boss encounter of some kind where I start out with the emphasis on is the gameplay fun in this encounter, and then figure out how I can make it fun, and then wrap the actual visual design and make that encounter both fun and cool. So it's not really a start off with a werewolf idea or something like that. It's reverse engineering it a little bit, but that would be my philosophy for that.
Something that could introduce somewhat of a different gameplay that almost maybe in some way differentiate the game from other like horror shooters, that will be a very interesting addition.
I'd probably go for something that, again, has something sort of unique and interesting, so some sort of original functionality. Perhaps something that requires actually, no, it would be something that changes every time that you experience it. So let's say, for example, you experience coming across some sort of entity that if you shoot at it, the next time you encounter it, it will appear and act differently. And every time you interact thereforth, it will also evolve in some sort of way.
Yeah.
But it depends purely on how you interact. So it's perpetually changing, and it almost makes the experience completely different each time that you play. Something like that would be cool.
Yeah, I just had another idea based on some of the questions and stuff we were talking about before. I think it'd be cool to design like a friendly SCP, that comes around every once in a while, gives a hint or gives a tip, but ultimately you're supposed to like sympathize or empathize with it more so than like be afraid or want to kill it, I think it'd be fun to design.
Good to hear those thoughts on kind of creatures or villains. But speaking of villains, Nerd King of Horror 22 asked previously, but I overlooked this. I love me a good, well-written villain, and this will probably be a spoiler, but can you probably hint at it? But will there be any anomalous villains like 3125, the Scarlet King, SCP-5242, or SCP-5241? Is there any stuff like that expected in the game? Will there be any of the more, less monstrous and more character SCPs?
There is something very similar. It will take a bit of working out, I think. It's going to be... it might not take too much, actually, but it's going to be a little bit cryptic. So it's going to be a bit of fun to work out.
Ooh, exciting. Something bigger, something hiding behind the scenes. Ooh, what could it be? The SCP-1230? Choose your own adventure SCP? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Ooh. I guess what has been the most challenging from a design standpoint in terms of I would love to hear an answer from each of you in terms of what piece did in terms of either creature or design or a environment, what was the most difficult thing that each of you worked on?
I think for myself, it was probably one of the patches or one of the logos. I've made a lot, but there was definitely at least one or two that just had me completely stumped. And I mean, for a couple of days, I just had to work on other stuff because just nothing was coming. Yeah.
Me, I think some of the most challenging that I've encountered is not as much as the design itself. I get as part of the design, but it's adding the storytelling elements into our environments, because it's not the foundation is not an empty space where no one's there. It's a space that things have happened, and when we design, we have to think about how to dress the place to make it look like, to make the player, make the audience feel what is happening there, to kind of pick up some little clues or even add in small stories here and there to show that background. And that's pretty challenging. You know, you have to think about, okay, what would I do? What will people do in this situation? And how would that affect the environment? That's probably the part that takes a lot of thinking for me.
I might not have a very good answer, but I know for the processing labs, because it's such a grounded space, I did just do a lot of research into actual biological labs and figure out how they do things, at least to some degree. And when you can't really put too much pizzazz into it, you really have to rely on, the fundamentals, which is sometimes the hardest thing to do.
King Nerd asks, are there any SCPs from the foreign branches going to be planned for the game? Like any SCPs from the CN China branch or the IT Italy branch?
I do not think so. Not for this particular facility.
But just a little bit of a teaser. I don't know if any of you are following Josie, but Josie takes place in India in the Mumbai branch, and there will be a bunch of SCPs in there that you will not see here. So if you want to look for foreign branch SCPs, definitely pick up SCP Josie, add it to your Steam waitlist. And also, SCP Josie is connected to the 5K universe. Oh my god, crossover, Marvel Cinematic Universe, Nick Fury, Multiverse. Wish listed on Steam right now.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely check that one out. Actually, it's pretty cool. It's come along pretty well as well. It's gonna be a fun little game.
Any thoughts on the art direction of Josie? Because it is so drastically different from 5K. I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah. No, it's pretty cool. They've come up with their own sort of style for the game, and the artwork that I've seen for it is phenomenal. Like, it's just really, really beautiful stuff. Extremely different to what we do for 5K, of course. But then again, the game itself is a completely different style as well, like in terms of its gameplay and everything. So yeah, it's definitely well suited, I think, for the genre and for how it's being approached. And yeah, it's genuinely just a beautiful looking game. It's yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Kyle.
Kind words. I'm sure that they are hearing it in spirit. I think now they usually do the Josie meetings. So Record Breaker asks, do you consider adding in the most iconic SCPs like 096, 049, or 106?
That will depend. I believe our list of SCPs is nearing its end. Whether they will make it. Okay, so depending on does it make sense for them to exist at Area 12 during this time, and also B, what capacity would they be in? So, for example, they might only make it in as we might see the containment chamber or we might see the containment door. Whether they would be visible inside is another question as well. It's just, purely to how they would fit. Because it would be awesome to add every single SCP that we possibly could do. But we do have to be mindful of the story and make sure that it does make sense for these things to exist in this particular location, and that they are serving some sort of purpose. Because it does take a lot of time and effort and to put these things together. So we just have to be mindful of it.
Well said. I mean, here's a nightmare proposition for you. If you had to guesstimate, how much time do you think it would take to put in every single SCP in the game, or at least come up with concept art for it? Assuming that was a demand, and Elon Musk decided to do it and throw $1 billion at it.
Oh boy. Well, how many SCPs are there at the moment? There's
More billion.
It's either between 7,500 or 8,000. I know it's getting close to there.
Far out. Okay. Okay, so that is a lot. We would need to. So first and foremost, we would actually need to expand the team to be able to cover that. And it also depends on like how much art is needed for each thing, because some SCPs are more like, are we considering like environmental SCPs as well? Like, are we thinking like ones that are multi-dimensional, like it's just you moving through different dimensions, or are we talking about ones that are just physical creatures? Because if it's physical creatures, it depends on the complexity of each creature. Like one creature might necessitate several images to show it from different sides, or if it changes, or if it has some sort of interesting functionality to it that we might need to illustrate. Or some might only require one. If it's a very simple shape, a simple set of textures, or I guess it's honestly depends, but it would certainly take a long time because it is a lot of SCPs.
So we are coming on 3 hours for this wonderful stream. I'm feeling like you guys should get back to your more productive stuff. Would you want to go for like another 10 minutes, then wrap things up? How are things going on your end?
That sounds good for me, personally.
Yeah, give it 10 more minutes.
Yeah, sounds good.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I hope you've all been enjoying this discussion of forklifts, SCP art careers. King Nerd thinks, I think the butt ghost could be terrifying enemy in the game. I know that there is a lot of love for the butt ghost. I don't know if you're familiar with that SCP.
Unfortunately, yeah. Yeah, that's good.
I had a lot of fun with. Oh, sorry. Finish your thought.
No. Sorry, you go.
The forklift design was really fun to see. Is there any way we could end this stream with a design off of the butt ghost? Like hypothetically, let's say it's going in.
Maybe not. I don't want to get slammed in case there's anything sketchy.
Fair enough. Yeah, I guess there would be a lot of butt reference material you'd have to look over. You don't want to do risk anything. We like to keep this, SCP may be a game of horror, but the SCP streams are a fun and relaxing place that welcoming of all.
Yeah, that's all good.
Are there any movies or games?
Earlier.
Oh, sorry. Finish the question, but I was curious if there are any games.
Yeah.
Are there any games or we'll finish the one that you wanted to respond to, but are there any games or movies you guys are looking forward to that are coming out soon that will rejuvenate your artistic energy?
Good question.
I'm keen for June 2.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. It's not coming out, it's already out, but yeah. I love the first one. Love the director's work. I love his his take on Blade Runner 2049.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of cyberpunk genre.
That's great.
Dune is good for the soul. By any chance, did you guys see there's this guy, he was either a social media manager or a concept artist, and he like made like a Dune sandworm that he rode around to the movie theater. And so he had footage of him in like, what was it, Freeman like armor still suit cosplay, and he like rode this worm into the theater of AMC to go watch Dune.
I have not seen that, but is that legal? Can you ride a worm? I don't know.
Probably not, but you can ride a remote-controlled approximation of a worm as long as you don't run into anyone.
Yeah, that's true.
And in that regard, from an artistic standpoint, do you guys have any thoughts on the infamous Dune popcorn bucket at AMC?
I'm just impressed that because that had to go through multiple people. Like, I had to go through quite a lot of approvals to get to the manufacturing point and then to the distribution point after that. So a lot of people thought that was perfectly fine.
Yeah. Someone at the top was like, this has to happen. Nobody else could contradict them. That's what I feel like.
You should make a one with one of the spitters.
True.
For 5K.
True.
Be the most cursed item.
Collector's edition, legendary.
I think someone else also asked, are any of you responsible for designing the Area 12 guards?
Yeah, so the guards themselves were designed and modeled by Dean, the 3D guy, 3D lead, and the color change was from Trey and myself. From the black and brown to the white and amber.
And you were also responsible for the soon-to-be iconic D-Class design, right? The very distinctive affray. By any chance, did you see the TikTok video I linked in the developers Discord where someone was cosplaying as the D-Class you designed?
Yeah, I did. That was awesome. That was so cool. That was sick to see. It's very cool.
Looking forward
They did
to
pretty well.
D-Class in general, to be honest.
Oh, I was very inspired because I was looking around D-Class designs and I was like kind of curious. Is there anything that like is comparable to like the Affray D-Class? And I did not see anything. So I think you've got like a really good design. I'll tell you one thing that is my dream for marketing social media promotion. Have any of you ever heard of Cosplay Pro Wrestling?
No, but maybe the name is self-explanatory.
It's amazing. It's basically like this wrestling circuit where people dress up in cosplay and then they wrestle. And what I really want to do is I want to like see if I can convince them to like use the Discord cosplay outfit that Trey had made and see if I can get it incorporated into the show. So just like, you've got this D-Class Discord goo who just like wrestles like, Mega Man and other anime video game characters. Yeah, exactly. He fights Goku in a wrestling ring.
That'd be sick.
All right. As we wind things down, one of our final questions. Isaac asks, one last question about the Area 12 security. Why are the visors orange? Like, what is the practicality of it from your words?
Oh, easy. So these guys are working in quite a dark environment, and it's also, everything's sort of lit with this sort of cool lighting. So over time, the eye strain would become quite severe. Especially when you're getting like, a lack of vitamin D and such. So the orange will help to warm that light up and sort of, well, not warm the light up, it gives you a warmer view. So it actually helps you, it helps with the eye strain. the other aspect to it is that we wanted to have a kind of a red versus blue kind of aesthetic. So we've got like the blue FBI characters versus the sort of amber color for the guards, with of course the white suits being to show off the blood mechanics that we've worked so hard on. And it's a bit of a nod towards the original Containment Breach guards as well, because they used white, but they had it was like the greeny yellow sort of visor. But yeah, so we've gone for that to kind of create. It's almost like a difficulty scaling, I guess. A lot of the other enemies in the game have some sort of red or amber element to them, so it's just part of that that sort of color coding, if you will. So yeah, that's pretty much why we picked that. And also we like when we were doing the original art for them, surprisingly, what actually looked like the most aesthetic, like in terms of their design and the colors, was actually like a pinkish red. But we chose not to go with something like that, or even just the red, because we didn't want them to appear immediately like a villain. Like we've really got that kind of aesthetic happening with a lot of the Size Z creatures, because they have that vibrant red to them. But we wanted to dial it back a bit. So what we did is we went for the amber instead, because it's not quite red, but it is something that does exist. Like you can get orange visors, especially for anything that has like bright flashes. So of course, if these guys are shooting and they've got like SCPs and things in different rounds of ammo, that would perhaps it would help as well to kind of to kind of protect their vision in a sense. So that was pretty much the thinking behind that.
Well thought out. Good logic. All right, so let us wrap things up. I would love for you to each give a final goodbye and send-off statement and well wishes you can give to the audience who've been enjoying this wonderful artistic evening. Also, we have some more events coming up. This weekend, we will be doing another movie night, so look for announcement of that in the Affray Discord, and I will, of course, be posting about it, so I hope to see as many of you who are free to come hang out, enjoy some movies, make some snacks, pop some popcorn, snuggle up with a friend or loved one, and get ready to relax with some wonderful classic SCP kind of inspiring films. So I hope I will see you there. And the devlog is coming very, very soon, so I don't know precisely when that's going to go out. I just know that, like, you be ready, have all your social medias queued up, and we will know when it's up. And, you know, we can't wait to see you there, either when it premieres or in the comments section. So keep an eye out. It's coming really, really soon.
Cool. I can go first real quick. Appreciate reading all the chats, getting to answer some cool questions, and look forward to actually showing you the stuff we can't talk about right now. Like, really excited about that. So hopefully it'll be fun for you all too in the future.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. It was awesome just getting to chat and of course listening to all of your questions. It's really nice to see like you know what you guys are wondering about. It is a struggle to know that we could answer so much more and provide so much more info and show so much more stuff. But we do just have to keep it under wraps, unfortunately, for the moment. But thank you so much for listening to us and for taking the time out to stay here and ask us the questions. And yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And it's really inspiring in a way to see the people who are passionate about what we're working on. And really, I'm also excited to looking forward to the later updates and how the game is going to become. And I hope everyone will enjoy that.
Fantastic. We'll have to have you again once the update's out. Figure out a time where we can bring you all in and you can showcase all the stuff you couldn't show, all the behind the scenes. We'll definitely have to figure out a time for that. But thank you so much for finding the time for this. I hope you all had a wonderful evening. And take it easy, and we'll see you at the next Affray event. So have a good evening, and with that, we bid you adieu. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.